So anyway, FriendlyJordies uploaded this video about millennials having problems with relationships and Gen Z as well. And I thought it was quite a good video, apart from at the end where he went on this babble about Buddhist bullshit. But in general, what he was saying in the video is that people need to really moderate their expectations. And he even endorsed, to some extent, the idea that before marriage should limit the number of partners that you have. He didn't explicitly endorse it. He said, people say that, sort of high school sweethearts that get together and stay together, well, their marriages work out. And there's some truth in that, is what he said. Because you haven't had the other relationships, you don't have these unrealistic expectations, and you don't think back and say, I've got to compare my current spouse to those ones who got away. And he's absolutely right about all of that. And I think that stems from this really deleterious culture that we have now, where people compare themselves to totally unrealistic things. But it goes deeper than that. It goes back a long ways now to just the whole notion of sexual liberation and sex positivity in general. I would describe myself as a teleologically sex positive person, right? Most people these days are basically utilitarians, and so what sex positivity means to them is, are both people having fun? And as Australia's greatest philosopher has made the case for on national television, who cares, really, whether or not it's a person, a dog, or whatever, as long as the dog's enjoying it, the person's enjoying it, who's to really say? And he got laughed off. But that's probably the general direction that we're heading in. And I was once such a person who would make basically that kind of utilitarian argument for anything, right? And I would proudly point out the moral dumbfounding, as Jonathan Haidt describes it, of the poor people who just have a sensible, innate sense of what is right and wrong sexually, and kind of mock them. And I think that most people have this kind of innate sense of right and wrong with respect to sexuality, and that, in their, first relationship, what some people, named in a derogatory fashion, catching feels, if you will. And that's the kind of natural state of things. I mean, the reality is, despite what some people would like to try to represent in terms of the evolutionary side of things, is that basically humans are a biparental species that are basically monogamous, and there's basically most evolutionary theorists agree about that, despite some push to claim otherwise, right? If there's any sense in which we aren't, it's that one man may have multiple women, but this is extraordinarily bizarre situation if a woman is having sex with multiple men in hunter-gatherer society, because that produces ambiguity about who the father is, and then the different potential fathers aren't going to invest their both resources materially and emotionally in a child that may be somebody else's. Uncertainty around that fact is a great way to cause immense instability in a community, and that problem didn't go away with civilization, probably was limited to a large extent before civilization as well, because it just would have been very chaotic. of course, with civilization all around the world, you see the norms of monogamous marriage. In stable, developed civilizations, monogamy is, uh, not just the norm, but basically the only reality, except for a very few men at, the top of society who sometimes have kind of harems. But even the kind of societal regulation in societies causes that to not last very long, even in ones that permit it. I mean, something like Islam starts out with a kind of non-monogamous setup, evolves to be in practice everywhere that it is basically monogamous. Same thing with Mormonism. Mormonism started out with basically this notion of non-monogamy. A male could have multiple spouses, and now the Mormon community has basically decided that isn't okay. And there's a reason for that, because it basically was destroying their communities. Freud has some nonsense and whatever about the tyrannical father gobbling up all of the women, and there's something to that perhaps. But really, anyway, the thing that one of my friends points out to me from time to time is how the elites in our society, and every society has elites. Let's call them the upper class, well-reared people. I spent my fair share of time around them. Outwardly profess to the kind of virtue of utilitarian hedonic promiscuity with respect to sex, but when the rubber meets the road, they don't really adopt those values in their own lives. If you look at them generally with respect to all of these things that they would at a surface level say they've got no problem with, they basically don't do any of them themselves. They don't have tattoos, they don't have piercings, definitely not in sexual locations. Even something that's sort of like a nose piercing, right? Pierced ears, there's basically the only thing that you'll see among these people. There's some promiscuity that's around, but it's usually in the sort of more degenerate nouveau riche people who are sort of imposters, and in the others it's something which is strictly limited to kind of basically just out of school, university, below 25, and then there's an understanding that basically you get together with a long-term partner. And it's true that this is different to typical traditional relationship in a certain sense, in that a lot of these wind up being these kind of two career homes, but both of the people who are working there, the respective jobs, are earning six-figure salaries and can afford to spend the money to make everything else kind of work out. In fact, they're probably starting, right, or within the first 5 years of their career have hit six figures. By the end of their career, they're, in the mid six-figure range in a lot of cases. I'm talking about the real kind of elite of the elite, if you will, in a certain sense. And so, there's this great unfortunate disparity where the average people will wind up thinking, oh yeah, these ideas are great, they're totally fine for me to implement in my own life and see good outcomes for myself, but they're not. And this kind of unrealistic expectations, this unrealistic casual sex, it winds up making people totally dissatisfied and unable to be satisfied with any kind of long-term relationship. So really what absolutely needs to happen, and what FriendlyJordies correctly pointed out, is that people need to moderate their expectations. People need to learn to compromise, and people need to learn that, basically they have to reform themselves, they have to work together with their partners, and they have to be able to change and grow together. And this was not a problem for traditionally religious people, in the kind of Abrahamic faiths. There's a notion that that marriage is beyond merely a partnership. It's a kind of spiritual bond which causes the people to be united in an even deeper sense. In the Genesis quote, and they will become one flesh, etc. We don't have that kind of notion in our culture anymore. In fact, and we have a very encouraging culture of divorce. We really have no stigma around divorce at all, which is very problematic. I mean, people need to understand that is more than just a kind of thing that you do because your emotions are really riled up. You're in this honeymoon phase, and you feel very passionately about the other person. That it's not just that. You have to continue it on after that. Through difficulty, trials and tribulations, and the mundane aspects sometimes of life as well. And you have to get it out of your head that, I could have done better, etc. Well, that was something for a long time ago, right? And also, people are very misguided by the notion of thinking, simply because I had a kind of frivolous, short-term relationship with somebody of higher social status, that therefore I could have had a relationship long-term with them. That's really so far from the truth, especially I think with a lot of men today. They will, have relationships, with people that are, totally like, I would never actually commit to anything long-term. And the kind of decay of virtue in our society means they would never be honest about that, right? And so I think a lot of people go, this is the most impressive person that I've been with, therefore this is what I can expect. No, you can't. No, you can't. You need to learn to settle. That goes for both sexes, but I think it, especially in this case, goes for women. No, no. You can't get that level of man, right? May have fucked you. He may have even had a relationship with you for 6 months, although he may have been fucking other people and you just didn't know. But the point is that, we're now in a space where, unfortunately, people like, Andrew Tate are revered. And so what that's going to produce is it's going to produce a lot of promiscuity in men, a lot of dishonest promiscuity, a lot of, basically having casual relationships with people just to fuck them, people that they would never have a long-term relationship with, even if they plan to have a long-term relationship at some point in the future. And so, and we're at a very bad point with respect to this in many, many regards. I mean, for me personally, and most guys will say this, if they're talking about long-term relationships and they're being honest, they're going to tell you that the fewer sexual partners that the person has had, the more appealing they are, because it has an effect on women, where that innate thing that is there with women, where they, quote-unquote, catch feels, if you will, when that goes away, right, and when they have adopted fully the mindset of the modern world, and really all they care about is their careers, then they become very kind of, they become like men in a certain sense, and they become very emotionally uninvested. They as I think a kind of defense mechanism against having that heartbreak, and it turns them callous. And there's nothing which is more unattractive in a long-term partner than having a drying up of that wonderful caring instinct which is so attractive in women. I mean, the reality is that that's what is most attractive in a long-term partner is does this person have a beautiful soul, right? And in, for men that means, does this person, really care about other people? Do they really, want to look after and care for other people? And, then by extension, obviously, in marriage, you and your children, right? And there's nothing quite so unattractive, I should say, as a woman who calls a child who's growing in her own womb a parasite or something like this. It's an appalling statement, it's just kind of, and to compare, a child who, is the product of, decisions that she has made, that is there, an innocent product of acts that she has committed, right? A just and right product, right, who is occupying the part of her body that is specifically made for that, which makes the comparison to a parasite so ridiculous. I mean, it's like saying, oh, I voluntarily ate, what do you call it? Gut parasite, one of these worms, and now I've got a parasite inside of me, I need medical treatment. I might have done it voluntarily, It's not like that, right? Because the gut worm isn't meant to be in your intestines, but the baby is supposed to be in your womb, right? That's the purpose of the womb, the purpose of the intestines, not for the roundworm or whatever to be in there. I mean, one would think they don't need to explain things like this, but yes, there's something very, very extraordinarily callous about that, and there's, nothing that is more unappealing than a don't want, listed on somebody's Bumble profile. I mean, that is an immediate kind of, I'm just being honest, and this is what all guys think is you just look at that and go, this is somebody that, I'm never going to seriously consider as a life partner, because they basically have decided to end themselves, right? And when you commit to not having kids and your life is based around a hedonic utilitarianism, then you're just having fun while you die. And that's something which is just, I mean, it is something that only a very sort of lower class person could buy into as, this is what I want to do with my life. I mean, of course not, no, right? And it's only something that somebody with very short-term thinking would subscribe to, because two neurons to rub together to present 2 cents on anything can figure out that their 2 cents should be to have kids, and that you should have kids, and that society needs kids for many reasons, but if for none other than for selfish ones, because when you get old and you haven't had kids, literally nobody is going to give a fuck about you. I mean that. Literally nobody is going to give a fuck. You're going to be lonely, and you're going to be depressed, and you're going to kill yourself, right? Or you're going to live an extremely undignified existence in your old age, which, you know, you're most welcome to do, right? I mean, for now. Of course, the other broader reason at a societal level is because the only way that you can have a society continue to function is if that society has people alive to maintain it and to look after some of you fucking old people who haven't had kids. And if you think, oh, well, you know, there's lots of people elsewhere in the world, but there really isn't. You know, I mean, you know, China is apparently in population decline already, and most of the rest of the world, I mean, you think there are people in India, go look up India's, you know, population pyramid. There aren't people in India to steal. I mean, it's flat. From 40 to 0, it's straight lines. I mean, the population is not increasing. You can't steal people from Africa, really, either, at a certain point. I mean, this is going to catch up to us very quickly. And the notion that, you know, immigrants from Africa and immigrants from India are equivalent in terms of, you know, the kind of people that you can get is deeply confused. Even so, it doesn't matter because, you know, Africans are going to need Africans to stay in Africa
within a fairly short period of time. And I understand the impulse of the left, which is to say, oh, well, we don't want to tell anybody that they have to have kids. Well, look, again, and I probably already said this now, I mean, if you want to have an open, liberal society, that society is predicated on a certain level of economic success, and it's predicated, at least first, we have to agree, on the society's existence, right? And the individual liberty of the people in the society is based on their existence, right? If there are no kids, there's no people to enjoy that liberty, right? And so what you're reduced down to saying, if you don't want to admit the duty or obligation for people to have kids, is that you are the one who gets to enjoy the fruits of all of this effort that your ancestors have put in for generations and generations, right? Who have struggled through much more difficult circumstances than you have. And that you, right, have no obligation to continue that line of work, of hard, back-breaking work, right? You have it so easy by comparison. Your life will be so easy by comparison. You'll have so much more freedom. You'll have access to so much better healthcare and entertainment, ability to express yourself creatively through hobbies and other things. And yet you're here telling me that, you know, you will not at least accept this basic duty to a civilization which you have no right to, which you did not build. You have a right to it only within this obligation to the past. And of course, I haven't even begun to list off all of the degeneracies. I mean, all of the degeneracy. I mean, uninstall from your phone Instagram, goddammit. Uninstall TikTok. Uninstall all of this nonsense. Okay, stop wasting your time on this. Okay, is this what you want to do with your life? Okay, this is gay. Okay, this is lame. Okay, you are lame. Okay, and if you're there thinking, oh, this sounds real boring, all this family stuff, well, guess what, you know? Have fun with that life of degeneracy. Have fun with whatever it is you're doing. You know, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know what the fuck it is. You know, trying to get more likes on social media or some gay shit, right? Trying to fuck every single dick or pussy that you can, right? Or even worse, jerking off to some fantasy in your head or some image on a screen. Subscribe to some fucking OnlyFans, you fucking weirdo. Okay? Seriously. PSS, fucking Andrew Tate is OnlyFans, okay? It's OnlyFans for men, okay? Hustle's University is OnlyFans for men, for fuck's sake.
Look out! The blazes do you think you're doing?